I am Officer Ryan, 52 years old, and my 9-year career as a canine handler is ending in disgrace. My partner Max, the most decorated dog in the Denver unit, has just broken protocol. He's lunging, snarling, and refusing my commands, all directed at a 7-year-old girl clutching a purple backpack. Passengers are screaming. Security has their hands on their weapons, and my captain is yelling for me to control my vicious animal. I know my dog. Max has never been wrong. Not once. As I stared at the terror in that little girl's eyes, I had a choice. Trust my superiors or trust my dog. I chose my dog. And what we found in that little purple bag, it didn't just silence the airport, it changed everything. Before I tell you what was in that backpack, I'm curious where you're watching from. Drop your country or state in the comments below. And make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, especially if you believe that a dog's instinct is never wrong. It all started 30 minutes ago. 30 minutes ago, the Denver International Airport was just normal. Sunlight was streaming through those massive glass walls of the main terminal, catching the dust dancing in the air. You know the sound of an airport, that constant hum of 10,000 people all going somewhere else. The rumble of suitcases on the tile, the distant echo of boarding calls, the smell of Cinnabon and stale coffee. It was just another Tuesday. For me, Officer Ryan, and my partner Max, it was supposed to be one of our last. I'm 52. My knees sound like popping bubble wrap every time I stand up, and after 30 years on the Force 20 with K9, I've seen enough. I'd filed my retirement papers. Max, he's 9. In German Shepherd years, that's retirement age too. His muzzle is gray, his hips are a little stiffer in the cold Colorado mornings. But his nose, that nose is still a legend. We're the old team, the reliable ones. The ones Captain Gray assigns to the main concourse because we don't cause trouble. We just walk a visible deterrent. Just one more week, buddy, I whispered, scratching that spot behind his ear he can't reach. One more week and it's all about fishing trips and sleeping on the porch. No more jet fuel, no more stressed out travelers. Max looked up at me and gave a single slow tail wag. That's all I ever get from him. He's not a jumpy, happy-go-lucky dog. He's a professional. He understands. We were walking our usual pattern past the long TSA lines. Passengers smiled when they saw him. Max in his police K9 vest just ignored them. He's all business. A few kids waved. He ignored them too. He was focused, sniffing the air, checking the seams of trash cans, the bases of the pillars, just doing the job. My radio crackled. Ryan, Captain Gray here? Go ahead, Captain, I said. K9-3 is handling a disturbance at the food court. I need you and Max to swing by Concourse B. International flight from London just landed. Lot of passengers coming through. Just be visible. Roger that, Captain. On our way. We headed toward Concourse B. Everything was normal. The smell of cinnamon buns mixed with the scent of floor disinfectant. The click-clack of rolling suitcases echoed on the tile. I was thinking about what kind of paint to use on my fishing boat next week. A nice forest green, maybe. And that's when it happened. It wasn't loud. It was subtle. Max just stopped. Not a sudden halt, but a slow, deliberate freeze, like he'd just walked into a wall of solid ice. I was still moving forward, and the leash went taut, yanking my shoulder. I nearly tripped over my own feet. Hey, Max, what's up? He didn't move. His head was up. His ears were locked forward, aimed like radar dishes toward Gate B12. Max, I repeated a little firmer. His nose started to work. He was sampling the air, pulling in long, deep breaths. This wasn't his casual patrol sniff. This was his hunting sniff, the one I'd seen him use when we were tracking a suspect through the woods. My stomach tightened. I looked where he was looking. Nothing. Just the stream of passengers from the London flight. Families, businessmen, students. Nothing out of the ordinary. Probably someone with leftover sausages in their bag, I muttered. I gave the leash a light tug. Come on, boy. Let's go. Max ignored me. This was unusual. Max never ignores a command. I could drop a steak in front of him and he wouldn't touch it if I said, leave it. And then he started to whine. It was a sound I had never heard him make. Not in 9 years. Not in training. Not on a call. It wasn't a bark of alert. It wasn't a whimper of pain. It was a high-pitched, agonizing sound full of confusion and distress. A cold sweat broke out on the back of my neck. Max, what is it? He started to move, pulling me with him. He wasn't running. He was stalking. Low to the ground, head extended, weaving through the crowd of suitcases. People jumped out of his way, annoyed. Sorry, folks, police dog, excuse us. I stammered, trying to keep up, and then he stopped again, 10 yards away. His focus was locked. A tall man, well dressed, maybe in his late 40s. He was holding the hand of a little girl, maybe 7 years old. She had blonde pigtails and was wearing a bright floral dress, pulling a small, glittery purple backpack behind her. A father and daughter coming home from vacation, the most normal sight in the world. They stopped for a moment so the man, David, could check a message on his phone. The little girl, Chloe, stood patiently. She looked tired, and that's when Max barked. It was sharp, sudden, and loud. Growth! I yanked the leash so hard I heard Max choke for a second. Max, no heel! The man and the little girl looked up startled. The man's face instantly darkened with annoyance. The little girl, Chloe, gasped and immediately hid behind the man's leg, her eyes wide with fear. Max barked again. This was not a detection bark. This was an accusation. It was deep, territorial, and aggressive. Ryan. My radio crackled. It was Captain Gray. What is that? I'm getting reports of a canine barking at passengers. Control your animal. I'm trying, Captain. I gritted my teeth. I pulled on the leash with all my strength. Max, heel now. Max turned his head and looked at me. His eyes were wild, and in that moment he told me no. My blood ran cold. 9 years of perfect service. 9 years of being the most reliable canine on the force, and he was choosing this moment 1 week before retirement to lose his mind and attack a child. Sir, I am so sorry, I said to the man pulling Max back, who was now digging his paws into the tile. You should be sorry, the man shouted, drawing more attention. My daughter is terrified of dogs. What kind of training is this? Get that beast away from us. Chloe, from behind his leg, peeked out. She was shaking, but as she moved, her little purple backpack swung forward. Max's whine stopped. His ears flattened. His eyes narrowed to slits. That single bark echoed through the concourse. Garrow-F! I reacted instantly. A hard corrective snap on the leash. The kind of pop I hadn't used on Max in 5 years. Max, no heel! The man David yelped and violently pulled the little girl Chloe behind his legs. Are you insane? He shouted. Get that thing away from her! Chloe let out a terrified gasp. The crowd around us recoiled, forming a wide, silent circle. Max ignored the correction. He ignored me. He planted his 80-pound frame on the polished tile, lowered his head, and barked again. This time it was deeper. A low rolling growl that vibrated up the leash and into the bones of my arm. It was a sound of absolute non-negotiable warning. I felt the blood rush to my face. Hot, prickling embarrassment. We were in the middle of Concourse B. Hundreds of people were stopping. Phones, of course, were immediately pointed at us. Max! I said again, this time through gritted teeth. I used my full alpha command voice, the voice that stops suspects in their tracks. The voice Max hadn't heard since his academy days. I said, heel, now. He turned his head. He looked right at me, and in his eyes I saw something that sent a jolt of pure panic through me. Defiance. He was for the first time in 9 years telling me no. My mind was spinning. 9 years, 9 perfect years of service. This was Max, my partner, the dog who had cleared bomb threats at political conventions, the dog who had found a lost hiker in the Rockies when the thermal imaging failed, the dog who had sat calmly breathing at my side while gunfire erupted during a drug bust. He was a rock. He was infallible. And now 1 week before our shared retirement, he was losing his mind. He was becoming the one thing a canine handler dreads: a liability. Was he sick? Was this a seizure? A brain tumor? Was this how it all ended? Our perfect record, our honorable discharge, all of it vanishing in a cloud of public hysteria and a lawsuit. Sir, I am so sorry, I stammered, pulling on the leash with all my 52-year-old strength. But pulling Max when he's anchored is like trying to move a fire hydrant. Get that dog out of here, someone shouted from the growing crowd. He's aggressive. My God, he's going to attack that child, another woman yelled. My radio crackled to life loud enough for everyone to hear. Ryan, this is Captain Gray. I am getting multiple 911 calls from inside the terminal about an out-of-control K9 in B concourse. What is your status, officer? My status was public humiliation. My career was flashing before my eyes. Captain, I'm handling it, I said, my voice tight. Max is agitated. We're moving. You better be handling it, Ryan. Her voice was ice. Or I'm pulling you both off the floor permanently. The threat was clear. I looked back at Max. My anger was gone. Now it was just desperation. Buddy, please. I whispered the command gone from my voice. Don't do this to me. Don't do this to us. Max looked from the little girl back to me, and then he did it again. That sound that terrified me more than the barking. That high-pitched, agonizing, confused whine. It was the sound of pure distress. What on earth could make him sound like that? The man David was furious, his face red. I'm filing a formal complaint. This is insane. Look at my daughter. She's traumatized. I had to make a choice. Right now. De-escalate. Get the dog out of there. My career, Max's life, it depended on me ending this. All right, Max. Enough. We're going. I decided to physically haul him out to put my body between him and the family and just retreat. But as I stepped forward to grab his harness, the little girl, Chloe, did something. She was still crying, clutching the man's leg, but her curiosity must have overridden her fear. She peeked out from behind the man's leg, just for a second. She looked right at Max, and she gave him a tiny, tearful, shaky smile. It was the smile that changed everything. As she moved her glittery purple backpack, the small one the kind kids use for crayons and snacks, swung slightly at her side. Max's agonizing whine stopped. Instantly. His head snapped down by... His ears flattened. His eyes, which had been wild and confused, suddenly narrowed into a focus so intense it scared me more than the barking. He had the scent. He had the target. I realized it in that split second. It wasn't the man. It wasn't the girl. It was the backpack. Before I could even register the shift in his posture, before I could possibly tighten my grip on the leash, Max exploded. He didn't just pull. He launched. He used all 80 pounds of his muscle in a single propulsive lunge. The move was so fast, so violent that the leather leash was ripped clean out of my hand. I felt the strap burn my palm as it went. Max, no. It was too late. Passengers screamed. Security guards fumbled for their weapons. But Max didn't go for the girl. He didn't go for the man. He flew past them, bit down hard on the plastic handle of the glittery purple backpack, and began to pull, ripping it from the girl's grasp. He was growling, shaking his head, trying to kill it. And the entire airport fell completely, terrifyingly silent. For 1 second, one full second, the world was silent. The entire concourse, frozen. The hum of the escalators, the distant flight announcements, the thousands of conversations. All of it was swallowed by a single massive intake of breath. Every eye was locked on us. My canine partner Max, his teeth sunk deep into the handle of a little girl's glittery purple backpack, growling like a demon. The little girl Chloe was frozen, her hands still in the air where the backpack used to be. The man David just stared, his mouth open in disbelief. Then the silence shattered. It wasn't one scream. It was 100. A woman shrieked, grabbing her own child. Oh my God, it's attacking her. It's attacking the girl. Passengers scrambled backward, tripping over their own luggage. The wave of panic was immediate. And then I heard the words that every canine handler dreads, the words that are the beginning of the end. Shoot the dog, someone shoot that dog. My blood turned to ice. My hands were shaking. Phones were up. Dozens of them all recording. This was it. The nightmare scenario. The end of my 30-year career. The end of Max's life. All because of a little girl's backpack. Max, leave it! Leave it! I yelled, lunging forward. I grabbed his heavy-duty harness, trying to pry his jaws open with my fingers. Max, let go! The man David unfroze, but he didn't check on the girl. He exploded in rage, lunging toward me. Get your animal off her, What is wrong with you? He grabbed Chloe and violently pulled her behind his legs, shielding her. She is traumatized, I will sue you. I will sue this entire airport. I will have your badge for this. He was shouting, spittle flying from his mouth, his face purple. He looked every bit the part of the outraged protective father. He was convincing. And what did I have? A dog that had just gone rogue. Sir, I was stammering. I had no defense. Sir, back away. That's when Captain Gray arrived. She wasn't running. She was walking fast, her face a mask of cold, professional fury. 2 other armed officers were with their hands on their holsters, creating a perimeter, pushing the screaming public back. Ryan! She barked, Her voice cut through the chaos like a razor. I will not say it again. Control your canine. That is a direct order. Get him off that bag, get him on a leash, and get him to the kennel. Now! The finality in her voice hit me like a physical blow. This was the end. If I obeyed, I was admitting my dog was unstable. He would be tested, evaluated, and almost certainly put down. A canine that attacks a child's bag unprovoked cannot be trusted with the public. If I disobeyed, I would be fired, stripped of my badge right here on the concourse floor in front of everyone. My pension, my reputation gone. Captain, I pleaded, still wrestling with Max. The dog was a solid block of muscle, his jaws locked in a vice grip. He was shaking the bag back and forth, a low growl rumbling in his chest. I'm not asking, Ryan. I am telling you, she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Stand down. Your career is over if you don't. This was the moment. My whole life. My partner's life. David was screaming about lawsuits. The crowd was screaming about a monster. My captain was ending my career. I looked at Max. He was still snarling, still shaking the bag. But his eyes, they weren't the eyes of a mad dog. They weren't wild. They were the eyes of a working dog. He was focused. He was frustrated. He was trying to tell me something, and I was being too stupid to listen. I stopped pulling. Ryan, what are you doing? Gray yelled, her hand moving toward her own radio, probably to call for backup to restrain me. I stood up straight. I faced her. I made my choice. No, I said. A new silence fell. Even David stopped yelling for a second. What did you just say to me, officer? Gray's voice was so cold it burned. I pointed at the dog. I said no. Look at him, Captain.
This isn't a random attack. He's not attacking the girl. He's not attacking the man. He is attacking the bag. I took a step toward her, my heart hammering against my ribs, but my voice was clear. 9 years, Captain. 9 years this dog has been my partner. He has never not once given a false positive. He has never not once shown aggression to a civilian. Ryan, this is not the time for his performance review. It is the time. I shouted the words tearing out of me, raw and desperate. He is trying to tell us something. He is screaming at us. There is something in that bag. My voice echoed in the suddenly quiet concourse. Captain Gray stared at me. She saw the absolute conviction in my eyes. She saw the crazy, desperate certainty of a man who knew his partner better than he knew himself. She also saw the PR nightmare unfolding around us. The shouting, the cameras, the assault. And she saw the dog. Max, having heard my shout, stopped shaking the bag.
He just held it, staring at us, waiting. She had to make a call. The public, the lawsuit, the rogue officer, the insane dog. She made the only call she could. She keyed her radio. All units Concourse B, we have a potential security situation. I want this area locked down. Get these passengers moved back, now. She turned to the 2 officers who had flanked her. You 2, escort the father and the child to secure room B immediately. Then she looked at me. Her eyes were chips of ice. Ryan, you and your partner will bring that bag, and you will follow us. David started to protest again. I'm not going anywhere. This is kidnapping. My daughter is... Sir, Gray snapped, cutting him off. You can either walk into that room or my officers will drag you there. Your choice. We are going to find out what is in that bag. David, seeing he was outnumbered, snarled. Fine, fine. You will all regret this. You will all be working at a mall food court tomorrow. He scooped up the crying, terrified Chloe and let the officers guide him away. I looked down at Max. My entire body was shaking with adrenaline. Max! I said, my voice low and trembling. Tha! The dog whined, then let go. The glittery purple backpack dropped to the floor with a dull, soft thud. I picked it up. It felt heavier than it should have. Just slightly, but definitely heavier than a few toys and some crayons. Come on, boy, I whispered. Max stood up, gave his body a hard shake, and fell into a perfect professional heel at my side. He was calm now. His job wasn't done, but the first phase was over. As we walked through the concourse following Captain Gray, we had to walk past the stunned, silent crowd. Their whispers followed us like knives. Can't believe it! Assaulting a little girl in broad daylight. That poor man. They should put that dog down. I didn't care. I clutched the purple backpack, my gut churning. I had just bet my entire life and the life of my dog on a hunch. I was praying to God that I hadn't just ended our careers over a singing doll. Security Room B was a small windowless box painted a sickly beige. It smelled of stale coffee and disinfectant. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed, casting a harsh, sterile glow on everything. The man David was pacing his expensive shoes, clicking aggressively on the tile floor. "This is an outrage," he shouted, his voice echoing in the small space. "My lawyer will own this entire airport by morning. You have terrorized my daughter. You have assaulted us. I want your badge number, Officer Ryan, and yours, Captain, and I demand that mutt of yours be put down." Captain Gray stood by the locked door. Her arms crossed her face, a mask of stone. "Just run the scan, Chen," she ordered. Chen, the EOD technician, was a young woman who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. This was not a standard bomb threat. This was a public relations nightmare. She slid a high-tech handheld scanner, the IonScan 600, toward the glittery purple backpack. It sat alone in the middle of the metal table, looking small and pathetic. I stood in the corner, my hand on Max's harness. He was no longer lunging, but he was standing. Not sitting, not lying down. He was at full attention, his body rigid, his eyes locked on that bag. Chloe, the little girl, was huddled on a chair in the opposite corner, clutching her knees, her eyes wide and silent. "Running primary scan for explosive compounds," Chen announced, her voice quiet. "Nitrates, RDX, plastics, nothing. All clear." She switched a setting. "Running scan for primary narcotic compounds. Cocaine, heroin, fentanyl, methamphetamines, nothing. All negative, Captain." A dry barking laugh erupted from David. "Nothing. You found nothing. Are you surprised?" He spat, jabbing a finger at me. "I told you, it's toys. It's crayons and a doll. You brought in the bomb squad for a 7-year-old's toys?" I felt the blood drain from my face. My stomach twisted into a cold, hard knot. He was right. Max? My God, had he finally, after 9 perfect years, made a mistake? Was this it? Was this senility? Had I just destroyed our careers, our honor, our entire lives? Because my old dog got confused by a child's candy, I looked down at Max. He was trembling. Not with aggression, with something else. He was still staring at the bag. "Max," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "What did you do, boy?" "I think we're done here," David sneered, reaching for the bag. "Wait," Chen said. David froze. "I'm running a different spectrum," she said, frowning at her scanner. "Non-ferrous metals." She passed the scanner over the bag again. A single weak electronic beep cut through the room. "I've got a metal signature," Chen said, sounding surprised herself. "But it's not a weapon. The signal is too small, too low density. It's consistent with a battery, a small one, like a 9-volt or a couple of AAs. David threw his hands in the air, his laughter roaring with contempt. "A battery! You held us hostage. You traumatized my child. You threatened to shoot this dog for a battery." He glared at Captain Gray. "My daughter's doll. It sings. It plays Let It Go. Is that illegal now, Captain? Is singing a crime in Denver?" The room was silent. Captain Gray looked at me. Her expression was unreadable, but I knew what she was thinking. This was my mess. I had 5 seconds to fix it, or I was finished. My career was over. Max was done. I looked at David, his face smug, victorious. I looked at Chloe, huddled in the corner, still silent, still watching me, her eyes massive. And I looked at Max. He was still staring at the bag. He hadn't backed down. And if he wasn't backing down, I wasn't backing down. "Max doesn't alert on batteries, Captain," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. David scoffed. "Oh, here we go. The dog whisperer." "Shut up," I snapped. I had never spoken to a civilian like that in my life. But this was different. I looked at Captain Gray. He's not smelling a battery. He's smelling, something on the battery, or something with it. That bag is contaminated with something. I don't know what, but I'm opening it, protocol or not. "Ryan," Captain Gray warned, her voice low, "if you open that bag and all I find is a singing doll, I'm suspending you on the spot, pending termination." "I understand," I said. I stepped forward and put on a pair of nitrile gloves. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. from pure, unfiltered adrenaline. I pulled the backpack toward me. The glittery purple fabric felt obscene under the harsh fluorescent lights. I grabbed the zipper. The sound of it opening, zip, was deafening in the small room. I reached in. Chloe watched me, her breath held. I pulled out the contents, one by one. A doll, Elsa, a box of Crayola crayons, a half-empty bag of gummy bears, a rolled-up coloring book. David was laughing, a full, hearty laugh. See gummy bears, highly illegal. You've cracked the case, officer. You've saved the airport from sugary snacks. I felt sick. I had been wrong. It was over. I was a fool. But Max was now on his feet, his nose pushed deep into the empty bag, sniffing frantically. He let out that high-pitched, agonizing whine again. There's something else, I said. I shoved my hand to the very bottom, feeling the cheap nylon lining. False bottom, no. Just something hard. I pulled it out. It was a metal lunchbox. An old-fashioned, rectangular blue lunchbox with a cartoon character on the front. It was cold to the touch. Really cold. I looked at David. His smile was gone. His face was white. It's just her lunch. He stammered, his voice suddenly an octave higher than before. A peanut butter sandwich. You gonna take a kid's lunch now, too? I looked at the lunchbox. It was a standard kid's lunchbox, but there was one thing wrong with it. A single piece of thick silver duct tape was wrapped around the seam, sealing it shut. Captain Chen, the EOD tech, whispered, her eyes wide. The metal is the box, but it's cold. Why is it cold? Max stopped whining. He sat down. He stared at the blue box. He was perfectly unnaturally still. He was telling me, this is it. I looked at David. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at Chloe, his daughter, and his eyes were full of pure, unfiltered panic. Ryan, Captain Gray said, her voice barely a whisper, open the box. I put my gloved thumb on the metal latch. I placed my gloved fingers on the silver duct tape. It was cold. So cold it felt like it was burning my skin even through the nitrile gloves. Why is it cold? Chen, the EOD technician, whispered. She had taken an involuntary step back, her eyes wide. David, the quote-unquote father, was no longer laughing. He was standing perfectly still, his knuckles white where he gripped the back of his chair. He was sweating. And Max was a statue of black and tan fur. He was silent, his body coiled, his gaze locked on the blue metal box. Ryan, Captain Gray said, her voice barely a whisper, open it. I ripped the tape off. The sound, rip, was violent in the small, silent room. My fingers felt thick and clumsy as I fumbled with the metal latch. It clicked. A loud metallic snap. A wisp of white vapor like a ghost escaped from the seam. Condensation. It was freezing inside. David stammered, It's just her juice box. I keep it cold for her. She likes it slushy. But he was lying. His eyes were darting to the locked door. His performance was over. I braced myself. My mind flashed. C4 packed in ice. A chemical device. I lifted the lid. The first thing I saw was white styrofoam. The kind you use to ship expensive electronics or medical supplies. My heart hammered against my ribs. Captain, I said. I lifted the top layer of foam, and the entire room just stopped. Chen made a sound, a choked, horrifying gasp as she scrambled backwards, slamming into the wall. Her hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with a terror I had never seen in a bomb tech. Captain Gray didn't make a sound. She just went pale, a waxy gray color that I'd only ever seen on corpses. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I just stared. It wasn't a sandwich. It wasn't a bomb. Inside, nestled in a perfectly cut mold, was a blue surgical-grade bio bag, the kind you see on medical dramas, the kind they use for transplants. And inside the clear bag, floating in a pale, straw-colored liquid, was an object. It was small, no bigger than my fist. It was dark pink, almost purple, covered in a web of delicate veins. And it was connected. Small clear tubes ran from it to a small silver device at the bottom of the box. The battery that Chen's scanner had found. It wasn't just a battery, it was a portable pump, and it was humming, a low, steady electronic rhythm. Thump, 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 thump. And as we all stood there paralyzed in disbelief, the small purple object in the bag moved. It clenched. It beat. It was a heart. A human heart. Oh my God, Chen whispered, her voice trembling. Oh my God, Ryan, is that real? My mind couldn't make sense of it. A child's lunchbox, a glittery purple backpack, a living, beating human heart. The smells, the chemicals. Max, my dog hadn't been smelling explosives. He hadn't been smelling narcotics. He had been smelling death. He had been smelling a human organ cut from a body kept alive by a machine. Captain Gray's training finally kicked in. Her voice was a hoarse rasp. Lock the door. Chen, get on the radio. Code 0. I want FBI. I want Homeland Security. I want... Her hand flew to her holster, and in one fluid, practiced motion, she drew her service weapon. She leveled it not at me, but at David. Nobody moves. The room was frozen. We were all locked in this horrifying, impossible moment. David, his face slick with sweat. Chen shaking, fumbling with her radio. Gray aiming her gun with a steady hand. And me, just staring at the impossible, grotesque thing in the lunchbox. And in that one split second, while every one of us was focused on the heart, David acted. He didn't run for the door. He didn't lunge for the captain's gun. He moved for the only other valuable thing in the room. He lunged for Chloe. No! I shouted, but I was too late. He crossed the room in one bound, grabbing the little girl from the chair. He snatched her up, yanking her against his chest, his forearm locking like a steel bar across her throat. Her little legs dangled, kicking it uselessly. And from somewhere, from his ankle boot, a 6-inch serrated blade appeared in his hand. He pressed the tip of the knife just under her ear. Back off! The voice was not the voice of the whiny, indignant father from the concourse. This voice was a low, cold, gravelly snarl. This was the real man. Chloe let out a terrible, gagging scream. Daddy, let me go! You're hurting me! I'm not your daddy, kid, he hissed, pulling her tighter, using her small body as a perfect human shield. The entire script flipped. The floor dropped out from under me. This wasn't a scared father. This was a monster. Let the girl go now! Captain Gray shouted, her gun unwavering, but she couldn't get a clear shot. You're going to open that door, David, or whatever his name was, snarled, dragging Chloe backward. You're going to give me my package, and you're going to let me walk out of this airport. You're not going anywhere, I said, my own hand finally finding my holster. It's over. It's not over, he screamed. You have no idea what you just interfered with. You have no idea who I am. I don't care who you are, I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. I took one step to the side, trying to get a better angle. I just care about the girl. Let her go. I glanced at Max. The dog had changed. He wasn't barking. He wasn't whining. He was silent. He was crouched low, his muscles bunched up his body, trembling not with fear but with pure contained energy. He was waiting. His eyes were locked not on the knife but on the man's arm. He knew his job. I'm walking out of here, David hissed, or this girl dies right here, right in front of your dog. Do you understand me? He pressed the knife just a little harder. A tiny bead of red appeared on Chloe's pale neck. She screamed, and that was all Max needed to hear. The air in the room was so thin, it felt like we were on a mountaintop. It was a terrifying, silent standoff. The only sound was the sick, steady thump-thump of the small machine in that blue metal lunchbox, and the high-pitched, choked sobs of the little girl Chloe. David, or Kroll, or whatever his name was, dragged her backward one step at a time. His eyes were wild. I said, open that door, Captain, now! He screamed, his voice cracking. Captain Gray held her service weapon with both hands, her aim rock solid. But she had no shot. Chloe's small body was a perfect shield. You are not walking out of this airport, son. Gray said, her voice dangerously calm. There are 50 officers outside that door. It's over. Let the child go. It's not over, he shrieked. You don't know who I am. You don't know who you've stolen from. They will find me. They will find you now. Open the door. He was spiraling, losing control. My mind was racing. I had my own weapon drawn, but it was useless. We were frozen. I looked at Max. He was trembling, but it wasn't fear. It was the vibration of a spring coiled so tight it was humming. He was crouched below his 80 pounds of muscle, ready to explode. He wasn't barking. He was waiting. His eyes weren't on the knife. They were on David's body, analyzing, waiting for the 1 microsecond of opportunity. He knew his job. Let her go, I said. My voice was a hoarse whisper. I tried to sound in command, but my heart was a trapped bird against my ribs. Let the girl go. We can talk about this. Whatever it is, we can. David laughed a sharp, ugly, broken sound. We have nothing to talk about, pig. You call your FBI friends. You tell them I walk out of here with the package and the girl, or she bleeds out right here on your shiny airport floor. He was desperate, and a desperate man makes mistakes. I didn't look at Max. I couldn't. David would see the signal, but I didn't have to look. After 9 years, we were practically one mind. I could feel his muscles bunching beneath his fur. I could feel the air vibrating in his chest. I kept my gun level. Not yet, boy, I thought. Wait for it. Wait. I'm not telling you again, David screamed. His composure had shattered. He was losing it, and he knew it. He had to reassert his dominance. He had to make us feel his power. He made the mistake. He pressed the knife. It wasn't just a threat. He broke the skin. A tiny bead of bright red appeared on Chloe's pale neck, and Chloe let out a sound that will haunt me until the day I die. It wasn't a sob. It was a high-pitched, agonizing shriek of pure pain and terror. The scream wasn't even halfway out of her throat before Max exploded into motion. He didn't wait for my command. The scream was the command. He launched. A blur of black and tan fury. David was focused on me and Captain Gray. He never even sought the dog. Max didn't go for the knife arm. That's what an amateur dog does. That's how a hostage gets her throat cut. Max had been trained by the best. You always take out the foundation. He hit David's left knee. His jaws, with over 800 pounds of pressure per square inch, clamped down. The sound was sickening. A wet, tearing crunch and a sharp pop that echoed in the small room. David's leg simply vanished from under him. He shrieked a high, inhuman sound of pure agony as his kneecap shattered. His entire body collapsed instantly. His grip on Chloe broke. The knife flew from his hand, clattering uselessly across the tile floor. "Chloe, crawl to me!" Captain Gray shouted. The terrified little girl scrambled on her hands and knees toward the captain, who immediately grabbed her, wrapped her in her own uniform jacket, and pushed her out the door into the arms of the other officers. I was on David before he even hit the ground. My knee slammed into his spine, pinning him to the floor. He tried to roll, tried to scream, but I put all my weight on him, jamming his face into the cold tile. Max was still attached to his leg, growling, shaking his head, a deep, satisfied, terrifying sound. "Max out, drop it." I roared the command. Instantly, the dog released his grip, but he didn't back down. He stood directly over David's head, his chest heaving, his body vibrating. Saliva and flecks of David's blood dripped from his muzzle onto the man's hair. His growl was so deep, so menacing, David stopped fighting completely. He was paralyzed, staring at the set of teeth inches from his face. I yanked his arms behind his back. The zip cuffs pulled tight, biting into his wrists. It was over. Chen was in the corner, her face white, talking frantically into her radio. "Suspect down. Suspect in custody, officer, and K9. Our 10-4 hostage is secure. I repeat, hostage is secure." I stayed on top of David, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My gun was still in my hand. I looked at the blue metal box on the table. The heart inside was still pumping. Thump, 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 thump. I looked at Max. He was panting now, but his eyes never left the man on the floor. He licked his chops. I finally let out the breath I felt like I'd been holding for 30 minutes. "Good boy, Max," I panted, my voice shaking. "Attaboy. Good boy." The sterile beige walls of Security Room B suddenly felt like a tomb. For the first 30 seconds after the takedown, the only sounds were the frantic, choked sobs of the little girl Chloe as Captain Gray rushed her out the door, the heavy, ragged panting of my partner Max, and the wet, gurgling moans from the man I had pinned to the floor. Then the room exploded. The door burst open. It wasn't just our airport security. It was men in dark suits, their jackets flapping open to show FBI credentials. They moved with a terrifying, cold efficiency. They didn't shout. They gave quiet, firm orders. "Room is secure. Get a perimeter on this entire concourse. Nobody in, nobody out." "Where is the package?" They weren't our local field office. These men were from the Violent Crimes Task Force, the top of the food chain. The air in the room changed. It was no longer a local police matter. This was a major federal crime scene. I stood up, pulling a gasping, cursing David, or whatever his name was, to his feet and slamming him into the chair. He's all yours, I said. A stern-faced special agent, his name tag read Harris, didn't even look at me. His eyes were locked on the blue metal lunchbox. Chen, the EOD tech, was standing against the wall, shaking, trying to explain. Sir, it's a heart. It's beating. Agent Harris walked over to the table. He stared at the organ. He looked at the tiny, humming, battery-powered pump. He looked at the clear, chemical-filled bag. Then he looked at me and Captain Gray. His voice was low and held no emotion at all. You have any idea what you just stepped into, officer? I shook my head, my throat too dry to speak. He pointed at the man I had cuffed. His name is not David. His name is Victor Kroll. He's not a father. He's a courier, a high-priority asset for the Omega trafficking network. Captain Gray swore under her breath. Trafficking drugs. Agent Harris looked at her, his eyes cold. Organs, Captain. Illegally harvested. We've been tracking this network for 18 months. They are ghosts. They move high-value biologicals to private buyers on the black market. We hear whispers. We never, ever catch them in the act. He looked at the heart, which was still faithfully, horribly pumping. Thump, 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 thump. This, he said, pointing to the box, is a $2 million payday, a custom-grown compatible Type O heart destined for a private jet to Dubai where a client is waiting. My stomach turned. And the girl, I finally managed to ask. Chloe. The agent's face hardened. That is the evil part. We've suspected this, but we've never been able to prove it. Kroll specializes in cover. He kidnaps children who match the profile, quiet, scared, easy to control. He uses them as the perfect decoy. He walked around the table, his words hitting me like stones. Think about it, officer. Who stops a man traveling with his sleeping 7-year-old daughter, who questions a glittery purple backpack. You're looking for bombers. You're looking for smugglers. You are not looking for a man who has hidden a human heart in his daughter's lunchbox. It's brilliant. It's disgusting. He kidnapped her. I said, the pieces fitting together, making a horrible picture. Chloe was reported missing from a Chicago park 3 days ago, Harris confirmed. He snatched her, probably drugged her to keep her quiet, and walked right onto a plane. Once he makes the delivery, the package and the cover both disappear. Permanently. I felt sick. I had to lean against the wall. I looked down at Max, my hero, my partner. He was sitting at my heel now, calm, though his chest was still heaving. But how? I whispered. It was the only question that mattered. How did he know? I pointed at my dog. Your scanners didn't find it. Our EOD tech didn't find it. She scanned for explosives. She scanned for narcotics. She found nothing. Agent Harris actually smiled. A small, grim, unbelievable smile. That, he said, is the $2 million question. Krotes, or his handlers, are smart. They used a new experimental preservation solution. It's not on any database. It's designed to mask the signature scent of decomposition, the scent of death. It fools our electronic sniffers, and it's designed to fool 99% of biological canines. It doesn't smell like blood. It just smells sterile. So Max smelled the chemical, I asked. No, Harris said, shaking his head. He smelled what the chemical couldn't hide. He smelled the heart itself. He smelled death. He knew something dead was in that bag. I was still confused. But Max isn't a cadaver dog. He's trained for explosives. That kind of alert, the aggression, the panic, the confusion, it doesn't match a cadaver scent. You're right, Harris said quietly. It doesn't. And that's not all he smelled. What do you mean? Agent Harris looked at Captain Gray. The girl Chloe. We just got the medical update from the paramedics who took her. My heart stopped. Is she? She's alive, he said. But just barely. She wasn't just crying because she was scared. She has advanced acute pneumonia. Her fever was 104 when they brought her in. The medic said she's septic. She was dying. I just stared at him. And then in one blinding, horrible flash, I understood. I looked at Max, my dog, my partner, the gray on his muzzle, the intelligence in his eyes. Oh, my God, I whispered. Agent Harris nodded, finally understanding it as he said it aloud. Your dog is a genius officer. He wasn't smelling one thing. He was smelling two. He pointed at the blue metal box. In that bag, he smelled death. a human organ preserved in chemicals, a scent that screamed wrong to him. Then he pointed to the door where Chloe had been rushed out, and from the girl herself, he smelled life, but a life that was fading, sickness, infection, a body that was actively dying. I finally understood. That high-pitched, agonizing whine, the confusion, the refusal to obey. My dog's brain, his perfect 9-year trained brain, couldn't process the contradiction. How could death and dying be in the same place, attached to the same person? He was smelling the past and the future, the dead and the dying. He was smelling an impossible puzzle that violated every law of nature he had ever known. He wasn't attacking the bag. He was trying to separate the two scents. He wasn't aggressive. He was frustrated. He was screaming at me the only way he knew how that everything was wrong. He was right. The scene in the security room was just the beginning. The arrest of Victor Kroll wasn't an end. It was a detonation. As federal agents led Kroll away in handcuffs, his face a mask of cold fury, the airport was still on lockdown. But the story had already escaped. It started with a single tweet from a passenger who had filmed Max's initial lunge. Crazy police dog attacks little girl at DIA. Terrifying. But within an hour, the real story began to leak, and it was 1,000 times more horrifying. The first local news reporter to go live was practically hyperventilating. We are getting unconfirmed reports. Frankly, reports I can barely believe that the security incident at Denver International was not a bomb threat. We are hearing that a canine, a police dog, discovered a human organ, a heart, being trafficked inside a child's lunchbox. By nightfall, it wasn't a local story. It was the lead story on every news channel in the world. The video of Max grabbing the bag was played on a loop, but the narrative had changed. The screams of terror were now recontextualized as screams of shock. Hero Canine sniffs out horrific crime. The heart in the lunchbox, Canine sobs kidnapped girl. Angel Dog, the partner who refused to obey an order and cracked a global trafficking ring. The arrest of Kroll was the loose thread that unraveled everything. The information from his phone combined with the data from the portable heart pump gave the FBI everything they needed. Within 12 hours, the Omega network was on fire. The takedowns were fast and brutal. A simultaneous raid in a private Miami clinic, another in a New York high-rise, and a third in a shady pharmaceutical lab in San Diego. The FBI, armed with the information Max had provided, arrested 5 more members, including a disgraced surgeon and 2 other couriers. They found cash, they found weapons, and in a refrigerated truck in Miami, they found 2 more organs on ice. Kroll hadn't just been a courier. He was a central node in a network that preyed on the desperate and the vulnerable, kidnapping children to use as the most innocent, untouchable decoys imaginable. The next morning, Captain Gray, the woman who had been seconds away from ending my career, stood at a podium, the logos of the FBI and the Denver Police Department behind her. Her face was grim, but her voice was strong. Yesterday, she said, her voice carrying over the clicks of 100 cameras, this airport and this city witnessed an act of profound, almost unbelievable heroism. She paused, looking directly at the camera. There has been speculation about the canine's behavior. Let me be unequivocally clear. Canine Max was not aggressive. He was not out of control. He was right. His handler, Officer Ryan, recognized that. He trusted his partner over his own superiors, including me. He trusted his partner over the screams of the crowd and over the threats of the suspect. Our machines, our scanners, our human personnel, we all missed it. We saw a father and a daughter. We saw toys. We saw a lunchbox. But Canine Max smelled the impossible. He smelled a crime so dark, so depraved that his training couldn't even process it. He smelled death and dying in the same place, and he refused to stand down. He refused to be silent. He was the only one, human or machine, who understood the truth. Because of his instinct and because of Officer Ryan's unwavering trust in that instinct, a 7-year-old girl named Chloe, who was kidnapped from her home, is alive today. A $2 million human heart was intercepted, and a multi-state organ trafficking ring, a network that preyed on children, has been dismantled. These 2 officers, these 2 partners, did not just do their job. They reminded us what real police work is. They listened when no one else could. She leaned into the microphone, her eyes finding the camera. Officer Ryan and Kaden. I wasn't at the press conference. I didn't hear Captain Gray defend our actions. I didn't see the news crews scrambling for sound bites or the headlines calling Max a hero. I was at Children's Hospital, Colorado. The chaos of the airport, the sirens, the shouting, the adrenaline, it all just faded away, replaced by the sterile quiet of the pediatric ICU. The only sound was the soft, rhythmic beep, beep, beep of machines I didn't understand and the squeak of nurses' shoes on the polished linoleum floor. The air smelled of antiseptic and hand sanitizer, a clean smell that was trying and failing to cover the scent of fear. I was still in my uniform. It felt heavy. It was rumpled, stained with dirt from the floor of that security room, and probably smelled like airport fuel and dog. I didn't care. I hadn't moved from this spot outside the glass doors of room 204 for 3 hours. And Max? Max hadn't moved either. He wasn't allowed inside the ICU. Hospital policy. But he had found a loophole. He was lying on the cool tile right in front of the double doors, a perfectly still 80-pound statue of black and tan fur. He was a living barrier. His head was on his paws, but his eyes were wide open, locked on the door, watching every nurse who went in and every doctor who came out. The staff had learned to just step around him. They knew who he was. The entire hospital knew. He was the dog who had found the dying girl. He was the dog who had refused to be wrong. He was guarding her, even now. A doctor in pale blue scrubs pushed through the doors, his face masked, his eyes exhausted. He saw me, and he saw the dog, and his eyes softened. "Officer Ryan," he said quietly. I stood up so fast my bad knee buckled. "Is she—" I couldn't finish the sentence. He pulled his mask down and gave me a small, tired smile. "She's gonna make it. It was acute pneumonia. The sepsis was spreading fast. Her fever was 104 when you brought her in." He looked down at Max, who was now watching him intently. Whatever that man did to her, her little body was shutting down. "You two—" The doctor shook his head, a look of simple awe on his face. "You got her here just in time. Another hour, maybe 2, and she wouldn't have had a chance. Her parents are on a flight from Chicago. They'll be here by morning." I just nodded. I couldn't speak. The relief hit me like a physical blow so strong my legs felt weak. The doctor patted my shoulder. "She's a fighter, and she had a good angel watching out for her." He looked at Max. "Get some rest, officer. You both earned it." He walked away, his shoes squeaking down the hall. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the cold floor right next to my partner. The adrenaline, the rage, the fear, it all drained out of me at once, leaving me feeling hollow and 100 years old. I looked at Max. He was still watching the door. "You hear that, buddy?" I whispered. My voice cracked. Max turned his head. His deep, intelligent amber eyes looked right into mine. "She's gonna make it," I whispered. Max let out a long, slow breath, a sigh that seemed to come from the bottom of his soul, and for the first time in hours he laid his head down flat on his paws. His watch was over. I reached out and buried my hand in the thick fur of his neck. My vision blurred. I didn't even try to stop the tears. They just came, hot, silent, and heavy. "I was done, Max," I whispered, my voice breaking into a sob. I am so tired. I was ready to go, ready to hang up the vest. I filed the papers. I looked through the small glass window at the tiny girl sleeping in the hospital bed, surrounded by tubes and wires, her small chest rising and falling. I told myself I was too old for this, that the world was just too dark, too ugly, and that I didn't have any fight left in me. I thought we were just counting down the days, boy. You and me, just a couple of old-timers waiting to be put out to pasture. Max nudged his cold, wet nose under my hand. He pushed his head onto my knee and licked the salt from my cheek. I leaned my head back against the cold wall, closing my eyes, the tears rolling freely now. "You reminded me, partner," I sobbed quietly into his fur. "You reminded me that the fight is never over. You reminded me that we don't get to stop. Not when there are still monsters like him, and not when there are still angels like her." I wrapped my arm around his thick neck and he leaned his weight against me. We just sat there in the quiet hallway of a children's hospital. Two old partners 1 week from retirement who had just remembered why they started in the first place. The ceremony was 2 weeks later. The precinct courtyard, usually just a patch of concrete and a few sad-looking trees, was packed. Sunlight streamed down, glinting off the polished badges of dozens of officers from 3 different agencies. This wasn't the small, quiet send-off I had planned for my retirement. This wasn't just a sheet cake and a gold watch for 30 years of service. After the airport, after what the media was now calling the heartbeat heist, my quiet exit had turned into a full-blown media event. The mayor was here. News vans were parked down the street, and Captain Gray stood at the podium, a rare, genuine smile on her face. Max sat at my feet on the small, flag-draped stage. He was panting a little in the Colorado sun. His official K9 vest was off for good. He was just a dog now, not an asset. He was ignoring the applause as usual, but his tail gave a single slow thump when he saw her. In the front row, there she was, Chloe. Her real mom and dad were holding her hands, squeezing them like they might never let go. She was bouncing on her toes. She wasn't the pale, terrified septic ghost from that security room. She was pink-cheeked, bright-eyed, her blonde pigtails flying. She was wearing a new floral dress. She was in every possible way alive. Captain Gray finished her speech about protocol instinct and extraordinary service. Then she called my name. The applause was loud, deafening. I stood up, my old knees popping, and walked to the podium. I looked at all the faces. My fellow officers, my friends, the mayor, the stone-faced FBI agents who had flown in just for this. And then I looked at Chloe. I hadn't prepared a speech. "What do you say thank you?" I started, and I had to stop to clear my throat. "Thank you. For 30 years, I've worn this badge. For 9 of those years, I've had the honor of working with the best partner on the force." I put my hand on Max's head. He looked up, his tongue lolling, his eyes bright. "We're trained," I continued, "to see the bad. We're trained to find the bomb, the drugs, the weapon. We become cynical. It's the job. We trust our machines. We trust our scanners. We trust data." I paused, my hand resting on Max's strong neck. But 2 weeks ago, the machines failed. The data was wrong. Our human eyes, we failed. I looked at a scared man and a crying child, and I saw a nuisance. I saw a lawsuit. I saw the end of my career. The crowd was silent. But Max, he didn't see what I saw. He didn't care about protocols. He didn't care about a lawsuit. He smelled the impossible. He smelled something so fundamentally wrong. A life that was ending and a life that was already gone, all in the same place. He smelled a puzzle that violated nature, and he refused to accept it. He refused to be quiet. I felt my voice start to shake, but I didn't care. He broke 9 years of perfect training. He disobeyed my direct orders, his handler's direct orders, because he knew better than I did, because he was listening. The media is calling him a hero for finding the bad guys, for cracking this horrible case. But that's not the miracle. The miracle, I said, my voice finally cracking, is that he found the good guy. He found her. I pointed right at Chloe. He knew she was in trouble. He knew she was sick. He was willing to sacrifice his own life to be seen as a bad dog by all of us just to save that one little girl. This old dog taught this old cop that you are never too old to fight for what is right. He taught me that you have to trust your gut. And he taught me that the best tool we have in this job isn't a scanner or a computer. It's loyalty. It's instinct. It's a heart that doesn't know how to lie. I stepped back from the podium, the applause roaring in my ears. Later, after the speeches were done, as officers and their families were milling around eating cake, Chloe ran up to me. Her parents followed, their eyes wet with tears. Chloe was shy, but she was holding something. It was a new backpack, a small glittery purple one, just like the other one. I felt my heart stop for a second. She held it up to me. "This is for Max," she said, her voice a high, clear bell. "The other one was bad. This one is good." I knelt down my knees, screaming in protest, but I didn't care. I was eye level with her. "What's in this one, sweetheart?" "Open it," she squealed with a giggle. I unzipped the bag. It wasn't cold. It wasn't humming. It was filled, absolutely stuffed to the brim with milk bones. I let out a laugh that was half a sob. I looked up at her parents. "Thank you," I mouthed. Her mother just nodded, tears streaming down her face. "No, officer," she whispered. "Thank you. Thank both of you. You gave us our world back." Chloe threw her arms around Max's thick neck, and Max, my professional, stoic, serious canine partner, gently licked her face, just once, right on the cheek. An hour later, the courtyard was empty. I had packed the last of my things from my locker. The gold watch felt heavy and cold in my pocket. I took off my badge number 4482 and placed it on my empty desk. I walked out into the parking lot. Max was already waiting by my old pickup truck. His official canine vest was folded neatly on the passenger seat. He was just a dog now. My dog. I opened the passenger door. "Okay, partner, up you go. It's your last ride in this truck as an officer." He hopped in easier than he had in months. It was like the weight of the job, the literal and figurative weight of that vest, had been lifted from his old hips, too. He didn't look back at the precinct. He looked forward through the windshield. I got in, turned the key. The old engine rumbled to life. As we pulled out of the parking lot, leaving my 30-year career behind me, I looked over at him. He wasn't looking at me. He was watching Chloe and her parents in the car next to us at the stoplight. They were all going home. The light turned green. They turned left. We turned right. I drove toward the mountains, toward the lake, toward the rest of our lives. I looked in the rearview mirror as we hit the highway. Max had finally curled up on the bench seat. He put his head on his paws, and for the first time in 9 years, his eyes weren't scanning the crowd. They weren't watching for threats. They weren't analyzing scents. They were closed. He was finally truly off duty. I smiled, the tightness that had lived in my chest for years finally gone. "That's right, buddy," I whispered as we drove off into the Colorado sunset. "You did good. You really did." The story of Officer Ryan and Canine Max teaches us a powerful lesson about the nature of true instinct versus human assumption. In our modern world, we are trained to rely on data, on scanners, and on what we can see with our own eyes. We trust machines to tell us the truth. But the airport incident reveals a deeper, more profound form of perception. The EOD scanners designed to find bombs and drugs found nothing. The human officers, including the experienced Ryan himself, were deceived by a convincing Weichel performance. They saw a father and daughter, and their logic dismissed the possibility of a threat. But Max, driven by an instinct pure and uncorrupted by human bias, sensed what was truly there. He didn't just smell a single illegal item. He smelled an impossible contradiction that violated the very laws of nature, the scent of death emanating from the trafficked heart and the scent of a dying child from Chloe's hidden life-threatening pneumonia. This agonizing conflict, which no human or machine could possibly perceive, drove him to defy 9 years of perfect loyal training. He wasn't being aggressive. He was desperately trying to make his human partner see an unspeakable wrong. Max's heroism wasn't just in his final tactical takedown, it was in his initial refusal to be silent. He reminds us that true loyalty isn't always blind obedience. It's the courage to act when you know something is wrong. He teaches us to listen to the signals that don't make sense, to trust the partners who see the world differently, and to believe in the profound, unwavering instinct that prioritizes saving a life above all else. Sometimes the most powerful truths aren't logical. They are felt. If this story of incredible instinct and loyalty touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a reminder that heroes come in all forms.